Hello, good evening, konnichiwa, hola, and welcome to another edition of Cranky Gun Reviews, and yet another edition of Rifle and Pistol Pairings. This is part 16 in the series of Rifle and Pistol Pairings, and I can tell you I've wanted to do this video for a few years. I talked a couple of times about my Kel Tec Sub2000 and how I bought one and upgraded it a whole bunch and then ended up selling it to replace it with a Ruger PC carbine. Well, I recently finally picked up a Glock that with a conversion barrel will take 9mm magazines, and since I had a whole bunch of Glock 17 magazines for my Ruger PC carbine, I figured it was high time that I bought another Kel Tec Sub2000, so after 3 years or so I could finally do a rifle and pistol pairings video with the Kel Tec Sub2000 with Glock magazines and an actual Glock. So I had done a video series a couple of years ago about same pistol or same caliber pistol and rifle combinations, ones that would take, 22 Magnum pistol and rifle, 9mm pistol and rifle. And at that particular time, I didn't have a Glock to do this video with or to do that video with. I basically had the Kel Tec Sub2000 with Glock 17 mags, and I had a Smith & Wesson SD 9VE. Well, now that I finally have a Glock that will take Glock 17 magazines, and I have another Kel Tec Sub2000 that I've done all my upgrades to again, I figured it was high time to do a rifle and pistol pairings video. Now, I've done a couple videos on this Kel Tec Sub2000 already with all the flashlights and lasers and hand guards and red dot and things like that that I've done to upgrade it. But I finally got it set up to a point where I think it's actually going to be usable. So the way I have the red dot set up on this now, it's on a quick release rail that I can quickly mount on the top of the rail and get a good sight picture without jamming the buffer tube into my cheekbone, and still have the ability to take the red dot off and fold it, put it underneath the rail, lock it back in place, and then fold the gun up. The laser and the flashlight I actually moved to the left side of the gun because it makes it a little bit easier for me to reach it when I'm holding this. Your hand goes on that angled foregrip and your thumb kind of goes right in the location where the light goes. Now again, on the red dot mount, I had tried a really cheap quick release, and then I really didn't like that one. This one is a little bit better. I think this one was around 15 bucks, and it actually has a little latch that keeps the lock in place. So you push down on the button, flip the latch forward, take it off the top rail, stick it on the bottom rail in front of the angled foreguard, lock it back in place, and then you're able to fold the gun in half and use it any way you want. So makes it really easy to fold this thing up and carry. The height of that red dot is great as it compares to the eye relief and everything like that as well. The angle foregrip works out good, and here you can see that my thumb is basically right at the button for the laser and the flashlight when I have my fingers on that angled foregrip. So overall, I think my Kel Tec Sub2000 is set up the way that I finally like it. And again, the fact that this takes Glock 19 magazines makes it really good, so I can use those Glock magazines either in the Kel Tec Sub2000 or in the Glock Model 23 with the conversion barrel. Now again, someday I'd like to get a Glock 17. I want one with a full-size grip, but they're prohibitively expensive in my area since I have to buy one that's pre-banned to be legal. So I don't really want to spend the amount of money that a Glock 17 costs at the moment. This Glock 23 was a less expensive option, and I can shoot 40 and 9mm out of it. But you can see here that the same magazines, the Glock 17 mags, work in the Kel Tec Sub2000 and in the Glock Model 23 with that 9mm conversion barrel. So this makes a really good pairing, especially if you were going to be in a bug out situation or an SHTF situation where you needed to grab a mid-range carbine and a handgun that are both reliable and pretty accurate. I would grab one of these Outbags 4 magazine carriers. I've talked about these a little bit on my channel before. Anytime I get a new gun, when I get a whole bunch of magazines, I basically get at least 6 magazines for every handgun. So I buy one of these Outbags magazine holders. I put 4 loaded magazines in it, and I store it in a cabinet. And then I have 2 additional magazines for the handgun, one that goes in the gun and one that goes in my pocket when I'm carrying it. So this way, if I had to ever run out of my house and I needed some magazines, I could have 4 Glock 17 magazines in that pouch that goes on my belt, 1 magazine in the rifle, and 1 magazine in the handgun. And again, both of these guns are very reliable. They kind of aren't the most appealing handgun and rifle to a lot of people. The Glocks do have a funny grip angle and they're kind of blocky and ugly, but they are reliable, just like the Kel Tec. Kind of ugly, made of a ton of plastic. Some people hate it, but it's reliable, and they're both great to shoot. So once again, thank you for watching another edition of Cranky Gun Reviews, and yet another edition of Rifle and Pistol Pairings. Again, this was part 16 in this series. God bless America, support your 2A rights, get out there and shoot, and you remember, if someone asks you to give up some of your freedom for the greater good, remind them that freedom is the greater good. And my thoughts and prayers are still with Paul Harrell and his family and the crew.